I should do this again. Man, how did that go so awry so quickly?
It does, yeah.
I'll try it again, hang on.
Hello and welcome back once again to Opalwords, where we look at the terminology used on the Lightning Ridge opal fields and other opal fields around Australia. This time we're looking at some words that relate to an opal mine itself. So we're going to take a crash course on the basic process of starting an opal mine and the anatomy of a mine from above ground to underground. If you're planning to start mining for opal, please don't use this video as a guide. This is a video about the origin and historic usage of words. It's not an authority on laws and safety processes. We're also going to skip over a lot of things because, again, this video is about the words, so we're just going to focus on the interesting ones. Also, I'll refer to and quote from a couple of publications over the course of this video. One is the Lightning Ridge book by Stuart Lloyd, because of course it is, and the other is An Opal Terminology by J.S. Gunn, which are both great resources for opal mining definitions and history. So opal mining starts with a claim.
You want me to do this one?
Go for it. What's a claim? What's a claim? What's a claim?
A claim is the area of land that we select to mine. The claim is marked out by 4 star picket pegs that we drive in, and then we have to have markers coming off each peg showing the direction of the pegs. This is how we designate a claim and who owns the claim. This is what we call a possession notice that always is positioned on the most northeastern peg. So this gives you the owner of the claim, just some details, time of mark out, size of the claim, when it was granted, and the number of the claim. Once we peg the claim, the 50 by 50, the land we've selected, so we're happy with where we've selected the claim, we do the survey to give us a mark out for the map for the mines department, and then once they're happy where it is and everything is fine with them, they'll designate us 4 tags to go on each peg, and that's all corresponding with the claim number. So that is your working claim number.
Part of the process of prospecting for a claim is to figure out if there's any opal there and how deep you would need to dig to find it. The opal level or opal levels can be at different depths between different opal fields and even between different claims on the same field.
The level is where you find the opal. Next.
The opal level is generally indicated by a sandstone roof. If it's not indicated by a sandstone roof, the opal level where opal and knobbies or seam will carry will generally just be its own indicated band. So it'll just be an identifiable band wherever the opal sits. It can be from 1/4 of an inch thick up to 30 to 40 feet thick at any one point. Some levels have gone down right into mud. So the level actually becomes what we call a mud level. They become quite saturated, the clays get quite saturated. But it's basically any area of opal dirt that will be carrying opal, and we'll consider that a level, or anything under a sandstone roof really.
Level, of course, is a term that comes from many other forms of mining, particularly gold mining and silver mining, and mining for other forms of ore. Stuart Lloyd's Lightning Ridge book describes levels as separate and different layers, zones, or planes of opal dirt in the same shaft, and points out that some fields have only one level. An Opal Terminology by J.S. Gunn describes a level as the depth at which tunnelling for opal might take place, and further describes different types of level, which is something that we might look at in more detail in a future video. At Lightning Ridge, a prospecting auger drill is used to identify the opal level prior to sinking a full-sized mine shaft.
The dirt that we bring up in the 9-inch augers is generally washed on the drill with water using a small rumbler or a tumbler. So we're looking for good sandstone roof and good level. And as you can see here, there are several auger holes that have been drilled in the area. You're looking for the similarity in level, whether the level changes through the hills, whether there's opal coming up or just traces, knobbies, potch, bits of fossil, any sort of trace, and that gives us a fairly consistent indication of what's happening before we bring in a 3-foot drill and then set up to get underground properly.
And doing that involves one of these things. This machine is a Calweld drill, which is a drilling rig designed to bore 3-foot or 1 metre wide vertical shafts. A couple of things about the Calweld Drilling Company. A lot of people pronounce Calweld as Caldwell because Calweld is a bit of a non-intuitive tongue twister. But in reality, it should really be pronounced Calweld, as it's actually a shortening of California Welding Company, which is an American company, obviously, that specialised in building these drilling rigs. The rigs are designed with teeth on the bottom of a bucket, which is perfect for drilling into the relatively soft opal clay at Lightning Ridge. When these machines were brought to Lightning Ridge in the 1970s, they revolutionised the drilling process, and now they are pretty much the primary way that anyone goes about sinking vertical mine shafts. When you sink a mine shaft and you've reached the opal level, you are said to have bottomed. And this is a great time to throw in another old-timey word. If you drill a mine shaft and you bottom into the workings of an older mine that you didn't know was there, you've dug a Londoner. Why is it called a Londoner? I don't have a clue, but there you go. My research failed me on that one. Anyway, back to the mine shaft.
So this is an open 3-foot hole. As you can see, it's quite nicely accessible. It's a good size for working and good size for access.
At the very beginning of a mining project, you might only have a single shaft drilled, but eventually you'll need additional shafts to provide airflow.
This one here, this is one we use for air, and it's only air primarily and a safety shaft. So when we're working, we've linked up to an air hole. We can put ladders down purely as a safety aspect. If something goes wrong with the hoist, then we've got easy access out of the shaft with no worries.
Fresh airflow is obviously very important, so there are several methods of improving the air in a mine. The most common is drilling multiple holes to encourage airflow, as Sean has demonstrated. Historically, though, it was common to use something like a windsock to catch the wind and direct it into the mine shaft, as you can see in this old photograph. And it's pretty common nowadays to use industrial fans and machinery to move the air around, especially in larger mining operations. Safety is always very important in opal mining. Another safety consideration is a mine collar.
And this one has a nice collar put in, and that basically stops all the loose gravels and dirt at the top of the hole that will fall down the shaft with disturbance. It basically stops all that from moving and keeps everything nice and secure, safe, and keeps the water out also. Otherwise, with rain, they will wash out and you'll end up with an 8 or 9 foot round funnel. It'll go down and it becomes an exceptionally dangerous prospect. And the corrugated tin collars are generally the acceptable ones today. I'd like to say they're relatively cheap, but they aren't. But they do the job well. So the cost is irrelevant for the price of the safety.
Once you have a mine shaft, you'll set up some equipment and some ladders and you'll get down to the bottom of it. Depending on the kind of equipment that you're using, you might need to consider a shaft that's deeper than the level you intend to mine. The space in the hole below the mining level would be called a sump or a pit, or various other terms, and it's a space that allows the bucket of an automatic hoist, if that's what you're using, to sit below the working level so you can empty material into it to move it to the surface. We'll talk about mining machinery at some point in the future, don't worry, we're working our way through the dictionary here. For now, let's assume that you have a mine shaft and you've already gained access to the bottom of it, so to branch out and find opal, you'll start digging drives.
A drive is a tunnel, so you come down your mine shaft, reach the bottom, and then you make a drive in any given direction.
It's your quickest form of prospecting underground, is just to put a drive in.
Drive is a really old mining term that goes at least as far back as the gold rushes. It used to mean the horizontal tunnel that would go from an adit or a mine entrance in the side of a hill to either the main stope or mining area or to the vertical shaft at the centre of an ore mine. In opal mining it's a bit different because all horizontal tunnels will almost always happen completely underground. It's very, very rare to have a horizontal drive that will emerge from underground at Lightning Ridge. Stuart Lloyd's definition of a drive is a horizontal working or tunnel from the shaft, and he quotes a comfortable height for a drive at about 4 feet, which would be very claustrophobic nowadays. Jackhammers and mechanical diggers have made it much easier to dig drives, so tunnels that you can stand up in are far more common in modern mining. So your drives can go off from the mine shaft in any direction, and what you're looking for is what's called trace. We touched on this earlier when we were talking about the auger drills used for the initial prospecting of a claim.
What is trace?
Anything that is indicative of opal.
A trace doesn't even have to be opal, it can be an indicator of opal.
So traces is any form of potch, you can go into matrix, angel stone.
A change in the colour of the soil, it could be any number of random things.
We consider anything that was indicative of opal trace, basically. When we're digging traces, knobbies or whatever it may be at the time, we're looking for those traces to improve. There's always traces off the edge of patches of opal.
The word trace at Lightning Ridge has a much broader meaning than in other types of mining. In opal mining, you're looking for any number of geological formations or chemical indicators of places where opal might form, all of which signal that you're on the right track towards finding some opal. Gunn describes trace as potch or thin opal colour met in a shaft, which indicated tunnelling to establish a level might begin. The word trace also opens up a bit of a can of worms when it comes to geological terminology, because some of the indicators that an opal miner looks for aren't just different kinds of rocks, but changes and movements in the clay strata. One such thing is a fault.
The main one we look for in opal-bearing country is something we call a Z fault or a thrust fault. The second is a fairly straight fault in the roof and the level, where everything moves sort of vertically. Everything will shift in the country vertically along a straight slide, a straight fault, and a standard fault, which we just call a step. So anytime the roof moves in a direction, we will call that a step, and that's very common here. Some steps make opal, some don't.
Gunn's definition describes a fault as a fracture resulting from earth movement. So a fault, which is sometimes also called a slide or a step, which really depends on which direction you're looking at it from, a fault is really just the result of an earthquake or ground settlement 100 million years or so ago, which has caused the claystone to slip. The reason faults like these are exciting to an opal miner is because of the way that opal is formed. To quote from Gunn's book again, "Gems may form in the material of a fault or slide. An opaliferous material may fill a slide." So the general understanding of the formation of opal at Lightning Ridge is that millions of years ago, back at the time of the retreat of the Great Inland Sea, a silica-rich liquid seeped through the claystone layers and eventually settled into cavities in the claystone, where it would become concentrated and eventually form into today's precious opal. That part's the key. The opal always forms in spaces in the claystone. Those spaces could be bubbles, they could be cracks, they could be the voids left behind by the decaying remains of plants and animals, which later become opalized fossils, or they might be gaps and fissures that have occurred because of geological events and upheavals. So an opal miner is always alert to seeing these sorts of transition points and changes in the opal clay, because they're one of the best indicators of a region that might contain precious opal. Another example of a reasonably common geological formation is a blow.
A blow, or a breccia pipe, is basically an ancient geothermal pipe in the ground when it was all geothermally active in this area back in the Cretaceous period, when we were all in mud pools and inland sea, and we often come across them as a quite bright white feature in the grey and orange opal levels.
Lloyd's Lightning Ridge book says a blow is a disturbance where material is forced up from below, and Gunn gives a more descriptive definition of a fault in sandstone that usually indicates a chimney-like vertical vent or crack in the sandstone by which steam and silica once blew to the surface and filled the space with opal-bearing material. I don't have a decent image of a blow in an actual opal mine, but I can show you this. This is basically a man-made blow. Or to be more accurate, this is a backfilled 3-foot mine shaft that has been bisected by an excavation, giving you a unique cross-sectional look at an opal mine shaft. But this is essentially what a blow is. It's a vertical column of something different material to the surrounding claystone, which, much like a fault, introduces an instability and a change in material consistency that may have encouraged the formation of opal millions of years ago, which is exactly what an opal miner is looking for. So let's get back to our opal mine. If we assume that we're finding opal in this mine, then we need to be careful about how we mine out the deposit.
And we will generally put a drive through the opal itself until it stops. Once we're satisfied we're either to a border or the opal has stopped. From that point we go out along the opal patch, again to the sides to wherever the opal is carrying, whether it be off a slide or a fault or a step. And then from that point we will start to prop and work our way back. So we're always working in solid ground under a solid roof, and the area we've moved where the opal was would be propped, and generally kept fairly safe. So we'd either have pillars in that area, or like you say, if the Opal was carrying, we'd prop around the edge of those pillars, each one, make sure it was safe, and we'd remove the pillar from inside the props and continually prop inside. But we will generally keep working back to the actual shaft. It's always your safest point, and that's your exit point as well. If there's anything happening underground and something goes wrong, you've got to have a safe shaft to also evacuate from.
Just to touch on a couple of words from that explanation, we have a pillar.
A pillar is a column of opal dirt that's been left in place underground. It's load bearing, so you may have dug around it.
From Lloyd's book, we have a pillar as a section of virgin ground left in the workings to support the roof. Lloyd further goes on to warn that if you're gouging opal out of a pillar with a pick, and the pillar starts to spit dirt and rocks at you, you should probably stop, because the pillar is being heavily compressed by the roof of the mine and you're in considerable danger, so probably don't do that. We also spoke about props.
What is a prop? A prop is something that an actor in a movie uses.
Yeah, that sums it up. Next.
What's a prop?
So a prop is basically a piece of pine timber that we use once an extensive area of ground has been removed, an area that we'll call a ballroom, or anywhere that is unsafe, something we consider unsafe. So a prop is basically a foot round timber. We generally use something between 8 inches to a foot plus, that we cut in nice straight lengths, so maybe 8 foot lengths, and then we adjust those underground. So once those logs are underground, we adjust those for the roof height so they're tight. At the base of each prop, we put in what we call a foot, so a timber foot, and at the top of each prop, we'll put in a cap and wedges. So the same as the foot will be on the cap of the prop in the roof. We put them in tight, drive them in with hammers, and then we put in wedges at the tops of the cap to keep it tight.
And Sean mentioned a ballroom. At Lightning Ridge, a large opened out space underground is referred to as a ballroom. Gunn defines a ballroom as a large hollowed out area underground, which is pretty spot on. Ballrooms are dangerous for the simple reason that the bigger the empty space you create underground, the weaker the roof structure of the mine becomes, so the higher risk of roof collapse or mine cave-in. The roof of an opal mine is a carefully selected sandstone layer which forms part of the opal bearing level. A miner will mine directly under the roof layer because it's one of the more stable structures in the different layers of an opal mine, and the opal usually, but not always, forms directly beneath the sandstone roof. In other kinds of mining like gold and silver mining, a space like a ballroom would be referred to as a stope. In the ballroom of an opal mine, the roof can potentially be exposed over a large area, which introduces the real need for props and pillars. We've talked about both of those already, but this gives us a chance to talk about another really old term that isn't used much anymore because the practice has fallen into disuse. And that practice is pig-stying.
That's something I haven't done ever. It's an old...
That's, super crazy old.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, why not?
All right.
We're here.
We're here. So another term that we can add in with pillars and propping is pig-sty. Now, a pig-sty is something I haven't done personally. I've seen personally in many of the old claims, so claims that might have been worked in the early part of the century. And it was a term used for the propping of a claim by basically wrapping timbers around a pillar. So instead of putting them vertically as we would today, they were put horizontally and stacked, just like the fences around the old pigsties, particularly when they're only digging in 2 or 3 foot high at the time on their stomachs gouging, and it was very easy for them to lay the timbers in sideways and pigsty up and just keep themselves safe while working.
I'm going to go out on a limb that this probably isn't an accepted practice anymore.
No, it's something I haven't seen in any form of modern mining whatsoever.
Yeah.
Not in my time. No.
It's a fun term. It's an interesting engineering solution to a problem when you don't have something like props available.
So the old miners used to basically build Jenga towers around the opal clay pillars in order to keep themselves safe, or relatively safe. As we mentioned before, opal mines can have several levels. Some opal fields at Lightning Ridge actually have 3 or 4 opal-bearing levels. Usually you would access the other levels of a mine from the main shaft, but another option is this bizarre term.
The monkey is a small, hairy primate from every continent except Australia.
Yeah, and I can probably take the official version from here in that it's only a shaft that we sink in the floor of a drive. So wherever we're driving underground in a claim, Perhaps we have indicators on slides or indicators that there's a level deeper, one that we maybe haven't looked at or haven't touched. Could be 2 foot in the floor, could be a foot in the floor, could be the floor level itself. But anytime we have to dig down and have a look and have a prospect, we term that a monkey.
That's a monkey. Get to the monkey!
Put the monkey in the hole.
Put a man down there!
Both Lloyd and Gunn give the same definition for monkey, being a shaft sunk in a drive to look for another level. Why is it called a monkey though? I really have no idea. It's an old school mining term that dates back to the gold mines, where it used to refer to an access shaft between mining levels. It's possible that the name might relate to the term powder monkey, who was the miner that was in charge of explosives when they were blasting, and also the monkey heading, which was a tunnel that was specifically designated as a safe place for miners to retreat to while blasting took place underground. Is there a connection between those terms and a monkey shaft at Lightning Ridge? I don't know. Maybe the connection is just the word monkey. But pigs and monkeys aren't the only animals you'll find down an opal mine. Once upon a time, you would also have found a spider, which is the name of the steel spike that you would drive into the wall of the mine with a ring that you would put a candle on. They don't get used much anymore because we now have electrical power and generators, obviously. You might also see a turkey's nest. A turkey's nest is what happens at the bottom of a mine shaft when the shaft is partially or fully backfilled. Backfilling is basically just the process of filling in a mine shaft. When a shaft is backfilled, a mound of dirt piles up in the drive at the base of the shaft until that conical mound reaches the ceiling of the mine, and then the shaft will start to fill. The conical pile is called the turkey's nest, and it's a very unsafe thing to interfere with because it bears the load of the weight of the dirt mass in the mine shaft.
So this is a filled in 3-foot shaft. These mullokeeps are generally to be watched when people are out on the fields, because quite often they're unaware that there is actually quite a deep shaft that's been filled in under these. And over the years I've seen people specking on these holes, and that's not a good idea because they can give way, and once they do and you go down with it, that's where you stay pretty much.
And on that somewhat morose note, I think we'll call it a day. We still have a ton of opal terms to get through, so stay tuned. If there are any specific bits of opal mining jargon that you would like to know more about, please leave a comment below and we will definitely address them in a future video. This video was made with the assistance of Sean Gallman. There are links in the description to where you can find Sean's photography online. I urge you to go and check that out. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to IDU Curiosity on YouTube, and if you feel like it, we have all of the different flavors of social media down there if you want to follow those too. And thank you for watching.